Hello and welcome to Geek on My Sleeve, where we do spoiler free book reviews and live book discussions, such as we are doing right now. If you are new to this channel, I am Peter, and I have my co host Carl in the top left hand corner, and we also have two additional members for the Geek on My Sleeve community joining us, welcoming Marcelo and Barbara in the top right hand corner. Thank you for joining us for our Geek Out 16 here. We are going to be doing a live book discussion of Scythe, the first one of Arc of Scythes by Neal Shusterman. Before we really get into the live discussion part of the book, how is everyone doing surviving the shelter in place zombie apocalypse, if
Hello. So yeah, I'm definitely adjusting to the new norms. Um, Dealing with the e-learning for the little one, and just yeah, it's definitely interesting when or if you have to go out. How about you, Marcelo and Barbara? How you guys doing?
Well, as an introvert, I've actually been loving this. It's like I've been preparing for this my entire life.
been practicing social distancing for a while now, right?
Exactly.
Uh, been training for this. Um, yeah, what's everybody doing to keep sane? I know I have certainly been enjoying the new Animal Crossing, New Horizons. Visited your guys's island, village, town,
Island.
island
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've been playing together. Um,
A lot of playing, a lot of reading, watching anime.
yep.
There we go.
Ooh, what animes are you watching?
Yeah,
So he got me addicted to My Hero Academia.
I still haven't picked that one up.
Now, is
You
he.
need to.
It's actually pretty cool. I was like, I don't want to watch this. And then I started, I'm like, I cannot stop. I even bought the mangas and I'm like,
Oh,
I need
man.
to know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
That was going to be my question if you guys were cheating and going ahead in the mangas. It's not really cheating, but it's. Yeah. I
I'm
try.
trying to I'm trying to keep so I watched the first season and after I finished I started reading. So
Okay.
I'm going to try to only read the mangas after I finish the seasons. So
We'll see
okay.
how it goes when you get to current. But
Well,
yeah.
that's
we're
respectable.
we're halfway through season 3 right now,
Okay.
and we still have a couple books to get before we even get started with season 3 in the mangas.
Okay.
And then I never watched season 4, so I'm starting to push to get her to finish season 3 so we can watch season 4.
You're waiting.
Yeah.
Good on you. Famous last words. Only one episode. Just watch one episode
Yeah,
of
we
this
started
series
that.
and we'll stop.
Like,
Right?
we tried to do that I think two nights ago. Like we're just going to watch one episode and then we look at the clock, it was like 3 a.m. and we were finishing season 2. Like
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know some people will wait until like a season is at the end just so they can binge it and catch it all back to back to back. That way you don't have to do the whole like tune in next time and then wait a week. No, thank you.
I
Everything.
don't really like that. I'm an anxious person, so I want to know what's going to happen. So I prefer when all the seasons release, so I can just watch on my time, not have to wait 1 week to watch what's going to happen next.
Yeah, yeah. So besides the mangas, what else have you guys been reading? I know we were talking off air earlier, and Bob's just been consuming a lot of books lately.
Yeah, so I'm not working right now because of the whole social distance thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcelo is working from home, so to try to keep myself busy, I'm reading a lot more than what I was reading while working. Yesterday, I started doing a marathon. It's a fantasy marathon with a group of Brazilians.
Okay.
It's going to last around 20 days, and we have, I think it's like 7 challenges and 1 read along. And I'm currently working on the first book of the challenge. Right now, I'm reading. It's a book called Carry On from, I forgot the name, Rainbow Rowell. I think that's
Okay.
how you pronounce the writer's name. It's quite interesting so far. I'm liking it. But at the same time, I have a dubious feeling with this series because this book, because while reading it, I'm like, this is Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a lot of those moments too.
Like a clone of a different
I don't know
book.
if anyone read it, if anyone who's watching read this book. I'm liking it so far. It's pretty interesting, but I have this feeling that I'm actually reading a fanfic about Harry and Draco.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
I
it's interesting. I just passed the half of the book, so let's see when I finish how I feel about it.
yeah.
Hold on.
So I'm kind of like newer to the different reading challenges. Can you explain a little bit more how it works? Because I've seen a lot of different ones. A lot of people we follow on BookTube have been doing like an owl reading challenge through Harry Potter. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but like, how does it work for the most part?
So this challenge then, oh, actually somebody just said that it's supposed to be a parody of Harry Potter, so
Oh,
okay, I
okay.
was not
It's
that far
intentional.
then.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
Now
Harry X Draco parody.
that's
Yeah, so
a lot of fun too. Where I forget the verbiage, but it's essentially other authors playing in the same realm. Kind of like I enjoy the Attack on Titan anime, which has a manga, but then there are also several side quests, if you will, from different authors in the same space,
Mm,
or parody.
okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so what I was talking about, like these challenges. So I have been on the book universe, like on Instagram and social media for a while. I started there around 2017.
Okay.
Right now, my account on Instagram is not. I'm not using it, but I still follow a lot of Bookstagram accounts, and I have contact with a lot of people there. So
Or
so
or sorry, can you explain the challenge you mentioned? You said something about
yeah.
a marathon.
So it's something that a couple of Bookstagrams they get together to have a lot of people reading fantasy. I think it's the 5th year that this is happening right now.
Oh, wow.
It's it's all fantasy books. This year we were separated into groups and we are competing against each other to see who reads more, who gets more points. And these challenges, so we have to read a so I don't remember quite well what were the challenges, but I remember that we have to read a book written by a female author.
Okay.
We have to read a book about that has wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Um,
just different themes and
different
whatnot.
things, and then I went
Okay.
through my bookshelf and I'm like, oh, this book I can read this book to this this challenge, or in this other book I can read to this other challenge. And then I put my TBR all together, and we had to add other kind of stuff. Like one of the challenges was take a picture of your TBR and put on social media, and then that would count 1 point. I know that in a few days from now, one of the challenges that we have to dress up as one character of a book.
That's awesome.
I'm not sure if I'm going to
Okay.
do that challenge.
You should.
So
No, I don't know. I'm still having my doubts.
that sounds like a lot of fun though, because in a lot of ways, like reading could be very like solitary. You don't have to interact, but like it sounds like the reading challenge is really good about bringing people together just to kind of encourage reading and dress up.
It's really nice because we have this group chat on WhatsApp with all the people that is in our team. And so we talk a lot. So every day they ask, "Oh, how is the reading doing? What are you thinking about your book?" Or like, "Oh, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. we are just going to read." So everybody in the group is just reading at that time. When we finish, we are going to tell you how many pages we read, and like what we thought about it, if we finished any books. It's pretty nice. Like we end up meeting a lot of people that have the same passion that you do. Like a lot of people that I wouldn't met if that wasn't for this challenge. So that is pretty cool.
That's Peter and I just did a new to books bookstagram or booktube, new to booktube tag, and they ask a series of different questions, and like that's what brought us to the space is just trying to find like-minded individuals to talk and geek out over books with. Like we'll get to in here a little bit over Scythe, the Arc of Scythe, book 1. But yeah, you can't always find those people in IRL or real life sometimes. And especially with social distancing, we talked about this earlier. Now more than ever, we kind of need these little online spaces to come together, hang out, be social, and just read.
But getting out there into different challenges, that one seems a little more interactive, where the one we're currently involved with for the 52 book challenge, it's kind of like 52 books over the whole year, and there's not a whole lot of coming together or accountability. Everyone just kind of sets their own goals and posts about it on social media occasionally. But for your challenge, it's a little more X, Y, and Z or linear, where it's everybody gets together. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, we're doing that. And then you've also got the competitiveness of the two groups, like how you get point systems. And I don't know, that's kind of cool. That'd definitely be something worth us checking out.
We're aiming for a book a week, where I think Bob was doing like a book every other day or something there for a little bit, right?
Yeah, this week I read a book in like less than 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's when you know it's a good book, right? When you just
it was an
can't
awesome
put it
book.
Down.
Everybody should read this series.
Yeah. I felt like Scythe was definitely like that for me. I was really surprised by it, and once I picked it up, I had trouble putting it down. How about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, once I started, I was like, I need to know what's going to happen. I cannot stop this book. Like,
yeah.
I thought it started off a little slower, but once you got past, I want to say like the first 50 to 100 pages, which sounds like a lot, but I mean, it still keeps your interest throughout those pages. It's not like you're just trudging along or anything. But once you get past that, then that's like when you're hooked, and it's like, okay, this is this is mind blowing. What's going to happen next? Why do I have these other real life chores that I need to do? Why can't I just put everything into this book?
Right. Just keep going on and on.
That's
Go ahead,
very
Pete.
much the same feel for me. Like, it's not a book or a genre I'd typically read in, so I didn't have like the initial draw. But as we got going and the story progressed, I really, got invested and couldn't put it down.
I felt it's certainly for me, like, it's a big test. Does it catch your interest in the beginning? And I agree. It started slow, but it really caught my interest with just like the world building and the emphasis on the size and the side and this is the first book I read that did this, but the journal entries at the beginning were always very insightful at the beginning of the chapters and just kind of teased you a little bit. But yeah.
And I think that's time for our spoiler warning. If you cannot read and or see the giant image up at that way, spoiler warning about the Scythe book 1. Try to keep it to book 1. If you have read further, just try to keep it, if you're questioning whether or not it bleeds into book 2, refrain. As far as, I think this is the first time for me and Carl here that we have not read the second one yet.
Yes.
I believe same for Ba and Marcelo. You haven't read the second in the series?
Nope. No.
So we don't have to worry about that, which is nice. It's something that we kind of...
Before we start, I just wanted to send hi to Brazil, because I see that my aunt and my mom just sent a message on the chat. I just want to send hi to everybody in Brazil that is watching. And just that. Say hi.
You should say it in Portuguese, so they...
Oh, in Portuguese? So,
yes, please.
Oi. Oi, tia. Oi, mãe. Beijo.
Yes. Thank you for everyone showing up to hang out with us. If you haven't, if you could please hit the like button, we would certainly appreciate that. That helps us with the YouTube algorithm.
Saying hi.
And feel free to chime in, join the chat, share your thoughts. Also, as we try to break things on our end, if there's any technical difficulties or you're having trouble hearing us sound-wise, let us know. It might be on our end. And yeah.
Real quick, we had Creepy in the chat asking if we're going to continue the rest of the series. I do believe we intend to. As far as timing, it's just a matter of when.
Yes.
I've got to say, I'm not much of a reader. Before picking up Scythe to talk about it here, I think the last book I read was almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
But I've got to say, Scythe was a good enough of a book that, yes, I do plan on picking up the second book, giving that a read. And if it continues to be just as good, which is what I've been hearing, then I'm definitely picking up the third too.
Yeah. That's an endorsement right there. There's a lot they could do with the series too, which I think will be a lot of fun to get in the discussion here. Just all the world building and everything that went into this first book. Wow. So definitely going to try to continue the series. More than happy to do a Geek Out stream about it. Thanks again for everyone hanging out. Yeah. Wow. Where do we want to begin with book 1, guys? Lots of good stuff.
I guess the beginning makes some semblance of sense.
What? Start at the beginning.
It's not always for us, but the beginning, it has kind of a simple transition for me because it's almost like real life, except for they just add the flavoring of they're essentially immortal. And it goes and talks about, typical kids in school. And and it's really not a big leap. There's not a whole lot of, I guess, crazy elements to the world other than
Hmm.
the Thunderhead and how they are immortal.
Yeah, it's very similar to our current age, right? I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like a couple hundred years into the future. And those who've read the book, feel free to correct us in chat if we misquote. But I think it's something like 20-ish years from our current time, we basically solve infinite processing power, right? So they have all the knowledge, everything solved. The Thunderhead is all seeing, all knowing, takes care of everything. No disease, no famine, no hunger, um, none of that. So it's kind of this utopian society. And at the same time, even though it's several hundred years in the future, it's still, when you get into the universe and you start reading, at least for me, I felt it was very much similar to our current age, right? Not a whole lot of big technological jumps. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought, the whole idea of, immortality, I thought was really well done in this book, where it wasn't something that was so far-fetched that it kind of left that realm of believability.
Mm,
So I thought that was really well done, and it was quickly explained, but like it made sense the way they explained it too.
yeah.
That's
It's got to pass the believability test for me when I pick up the book. Um, Thanks, Creepy, for clarifying. It was 2042 when essentially, as it's referred to as in the book, like the age of mortality ends. And as long as you don't get destroyed in a fire, you're just deadish, right? And this book just does a great job kind of like introducing us to the world. I agree it's kind of slow, but that opening scene with Faraday and Citra, as they go and set up kind of like society's viewpoint on this book, where they're necessary. Everybody's agreed that they're necessary, but these spies who are outside of the law can basically just go and glean and murder to try to help with the population control. Um, it's very interesting how they set it up and introduce us to it. The whole concept of how do they refer to it as, is it turning the corner where they
yeah,
go
for
and reset?
reducing your age.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And one of the things I really enjoyed was just the progression. So we talked about it being very similar to our time now with a couple tweaks, but then the scythes, when we get introduced to them, are these godly esque beings that you know everybody fears because that is the only way you can die. But then we end up becoming or having our main characters become apprentices and kind of get into that realm, and it kind of takes a lot of the fear or the shock factor out of it because now they're in it, and then
mhm.
it progresses even further, and we're kind of by the end of it embraced or completely engulfed in the society of it, and just a progression from like being afraid that you're actually going to die to now you're the one doing the killing or gleaming.
Yeah.
I thought one of the things that really helped to take away some of that initial shock and fear from when Scythe Faraday was first introduced was to talk about like the 10 commandments of the Scythe, how
Yes.
they do follow a certain code of ethics, or at least they're supposed to.
Mhm.
And it just kind of made the Scythe seem more human than what their initial description was.
Yeah, and like seeing the beginning of the apprenticeship, that we take Faraday from this scary and untouchable character to have a more human character. Like he's still going to glean people, but we see his human side a lot. And
yeah, and his reasoning behind it, right? For him, later we find out he's of like the old school of thought in the Scythe, where he really takes responsibility for his role in society, to follow those commandments, and he even breaks it down to uh, who he chooses to glean is based off of, in the age of mortality, how many people died from certain things, right?
Statistics.
Yeah, the statistics behind it, which I thought was very interesting. Like, there's a method behind the madness. And since we touched on the 10 commandments, I wanted to read those off real quick. That way, everyone had a reference. And I know it's been a minute for some of us, but Commandment 1, I think this is how they even open up the book, is it tells you thou shalt kill. Number 2, thou shalt not kill with bias, bigotry, or malice. Afford, thou shalt grant an annum of immunity to the beloved of those who accept your coming, and to anyone else you deem worthy. Thou shalt kill the beloved of those who resist. So pretty much, um, if they fight back, you're pretty much sacrificing your whole family. So they have these, there to protect them too. Thou shalt serve humanity for the full span of thy days, and thy family shall have immunity as recompense for as long as you live. We see a bit of that come into play with our apprentices, right? Like they don't want to go out and quote glean or murder people, but if you do, um, your family gets protection. Uh, Thou shalt lead an exemplary life in word and deed, and keep a journal of each and every day. We get to see a lot of those journal entries, which I'd like to come back to again at the beginning of each chapter, especially a lot from, what was it, Grandma Curry or whatnot,
Yeah.
who takes on
Scythe
Citra later, Scythe Curie. Thou shalt not kill fellow sighs beyond thyself. Thou shalt claim no earthly possessions, save thy robes, ring, and journal. Thou shalt have no spouse nor spawn. Thou shalt be beholden to no lawns beyond these. So, like, this is their guidance, right? They're outside of the law, and these are the commandments they live by. And they kind of take on this, like this. I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. Perhaps you guys can help me out, but they're kind of like deities in their own way, right? And society almost views them as that when they go to the conclaves. They're part celebrity, part judgment, part
or godlike almost.
yeah, yeah.
Trying to remember
I,
the quote, but when Faraday first takes the two apprentices to the store and they realize there's, essentially three type of people that interact with the sides. There are the first group who flees and wants to get out of the area. Then there's a group who pretends that they don't exist, and they end up going into more detail on that later about how statistically out of how many years of life, they're not going to be gleamed, so it's not a big deal to them. And then you have the other people who kind of idolize them and want to give them things in hopes that they can get immunity for themselves, or immunity, or if not immunity, then spared in some other regards.
Yeah, you're referring when he goes, he takes the kids shopping shortly after they become apprentices, right? And just how everyone interacts with them. And it's really interesting to see how society, views the Scythe and interacts with the Scythe. And the story does a really good job taking us from the apprentices in their normal lives before, they even have any interaction with Faraday, and then they have the interaction with Faraday and just like their lives afterwards, and then just progressing into becoming sides.
Yeah, and how Faraday chooses them based on their moral compass, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the beginning when we get to see them interact for when Faraday shows up is pretty interesting, but then you also get to see them change and develop more and more. I guess, for
Mm-hmm.
example, Rowan, he calls himself the lettuce because he's got so many family members that he ends up, not
Mm-hmm.
as essential and not as um, noticed. And due to that, he kind of keeps all his emotions tight to his vest where he doesn't express a lot. He kind of picks and chooses his battles versus Citra, where she, as a smaller family, has been, very
Mm-hmm.
popular throughout school, has, a decent moral compass, and, actually challenged Faraday a little bit when he first showed up. She was essentially like, hey, stop messing with us. If you're going to do it, go ahead and do it. And she is more like wear her heart on her sleeve esque. But then we also
Mm-hmm.
get to see their change and development throughout it.
In a lot of ways, as bold as they are, they're lucky that it was Scythe Faraday,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I know for me, like you get introduced to the Scythedom and the commandments, and you think like, oh, they really hold true to these. And then we get our first impression of the Scythedom through Faraday. And then later on, when we meet all these other Scythes, like, wow, lucky that Citra and Rowan didn't pull what they did when they got introduced with somebody like Goddard, right?
Yeah.
Granted, Goddard wouldn't be
first,
showing. Oh, go ahead.
If it was Goddard appearing at either Citra's building or Rowan's school, it would be like the whole building or the whole school being gleaned. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
they wouldn't even have the chance to be rebel against them.
that's another
Yeah.
funky philosophical debate that just kept me thinking because so Faraday does it based off of, in the age of mortality, the statistics of, ethnicities that perish and places and events, due to car crash or due to whatever. And then meanwhile, his, first pupil, grandma, sorry, getting there, Curie, as,
Yeah.
Curie takes a different approach where, you don't get that relief, or you don't get that coming to terms with it. It just happens. So hers are kind of more of a abrupt or quick take on things. And then,
Mm.
as much as I don't know, at least for me, we all hated Goddard. He is, things like that also happen. Like for example, Columbine or whatever. Like as sad as it is, like that is still they're all right. They're all active or would have been active in the age of mortality. So it's weird.
Yeah, Seth Goddard, he comes across as the bad guy in the book. But when you really stop and think about what he was doing, he really wasn't in the wrong. He was doing things in more of a what's the word? A non-standard way to do it.
Yeah, different approach.
But yeah, but he still wasn't technically wrong. He wasn't killing people based off of any sort of biases or prejudices.
Not always. There were a couple moments, but
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
Most of the time it was
True.
random.
His last gleaning towards the end of the book, that one was off of a bias, sure, but
Mhm.
like his very first one in the airplane, that was unbiased, but unfortunately that is a very possible real life situation where an airplane could fall out of the sky and
but Vince said
Well.
Goddard did nothing
Goddard
wrong.
did nothing wrong.
In a lot of ways, they all met their quota in their own ways, right? Like,
Right.
what was the initial responsibility of the Scythe Thumb?
All the sides had this quota. They have to glean how many people, I don't know.
It was like 200 plus people, almost a person a day.
Yeah, and Faraday and Curie, they decide to kill one here, another two there. Goddard just decide, okay, I'm going to spend my 4 months doing nothing, and then when I have to, I'm just going to glean a whole airplane and meet my quota.
I mean, that's kind of the lazy man's way. Highly efficient. Just do a bunch of gleanings all at once and then take a couple months off.
He got the job done.
He did.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But we see that Goddard used a lot of cruel ways to kill people, and like what Creep is saying, he enjoys gleaning. He's having fun. He's like, he likes that. And
which with the old Scythe Thumb, like the old school way of thinking, we see through Faraday, that's not supposed to be the case. Like, the original size set out to where this is a service.
Why he chose Rowan and Citra, because he knew they wouldn't enjoy. And we actually see in the first, what is the name? The first conclave?
First conclave, yeah.
The first conclave, that one of the apprentices, he doesn't get the ring, and he doesn't become a Scythe because he showed signs of enjoying gleaning. So it's kind of against the rule.
Yeah.
That's another good talking point. I know we're bouncing all over the place, but the first conclave, so we've seen a little bit of our two main characters, Rowan and Citra. They're becoming more into their roles. They're being trained by Faraday. And then at the first conclave, there was a couple big things that stood out for me. And that was, the whole Goddard sleight of hand business, where he was like, oh, hey, I'm being accused. Okay, anyone who's accusing me, come up, say it to my face.
Yes.
Oh, if you come up later, it's, it's underhanded. No one's gonna, they didn't say it, so no one's gonna come forward. But if the accusation happens after the fact, then it pretty much points the finger, and it's like, oh, hey, you're the one, you're a coward, blah, blah, blah. That really irked me.
He was sly. He was tricky. And he knew how to play the system, which I think that's what ultimately made him as dangerous as he was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Throughout the book,
he had the high blading on his side, because we later discovered that he was blackmailing the high blade, but
yeah,
in summary, he had the whole Scythe under his, like, he was ruling there, because
he was building himself a power structure, and more people were flocking to him. We even saw some of the junior Scythes from the old Scythe Thumb flocking to him, as we saw through Voltra there. And
I think part of that is because Goddard was a charismatic person. He knew how to say the right words, when to say those right words to draw the interest of the younger crowd. And on top of that, not only was he charismatic, but he also threw these massive and lavish parties, which, ask any college kid today if they want to go to a massive party with celebrities and whatnot. Of course, everyone's going to go.
Right.
That brings up a second line of thought there. So all of the new apprentices that they take on are young, and they're all of the age that they could not have had their time reset, or at least for the ones that we see. So if anyone's above 21, you don't know if they've turned the corner and reset their time, because that's the youngest you can go. So all of the new apprentices, or once they get past that, I forget what it's called, journeyman or whatnot, they're all still young and very impressionable or malleable, and that's
Mm,
where Goddard is very successful with his approach.
yeah. Yeah. And he's viewed by many as like the new way of things, right? The new order, the
Mhm.
direction that the Scythe is going. And they don't want to be left behind. Like the Scythe is already this exclusive VIP club where you're the elite of the elite. You want to be moving with the times. Um, I really like how they draw the contrast there through society as well with the scythe of the fact that there are now no scythes from the age of mortals. So everyone who's been born into this world, or at least who are within the scythedom, don't have that perspective, right? And we talked about it offline, and I kind of want to talk a bit more about it later. Just like the age of mortality, there was pain, there was disease, there was all this stuff. The age of immortality, you have those nanites that are constantly adjusting your body, and how you never have to go through uh, any of those extremes, extreme emotions, um, or pain, or just any of that stuff. Uh, it's really interesting to see, and um, being aside, you kind of are just like detached from society. And I think we see that a little bit with Goddard, just like how much he values or doesn't value life, right? Constantly complaining about the second commandment holding him back. Um,
So, on a side tangent on that, for the nanites, there are a couple instances where the tweaker, as they call it, is put into play when Rowan first gets to Goddard's place. He has the lavish party, and then the second thing he does is kind of the hazing or an initiation ritual where they turn off his pain, or turn on his pain, off his nanites, and off his health and recovery, and just give him that
mhm,
contrast. And I a couple separate lines of thought. I think if more people utilize that, they would be able to experience more and have less of a complete shutdown. For example, the people who splat or they jump off the buildings, they just want to feel something.
mhm.
But if they were able to more freely tweak or adjust their nanites, they don't feel joy, they don't feel pain, they don't feel anything. And yeah, they're a utopian, but is that really living at that point?
There's no risk and no responsibility. Um, the Thunderhead takes care of everything. So like, what responsibility is there? You see Tiger, like even when his parents just give him up, the Thunderhead takes over. So there's real like no risk of abandonment. There's no risk of death. Um,
Yeah, all in
it,
all, there's like no risk at all in that society. There's just if you start feeling sad, your nanites will dump dopamine into you to pull you out of depression. If you start feeling
mm-hmm,
pain, they dump opium into you, or opiates, and they help heal you quicker. So if you do get hurt, if you, like you mentioned, Tiger with his splatting, you know,
mm-hmm,
it essentially the act of jumping off a building is like today's adrenaline junkies.
yeah,
It's something to get them going, to feel some little bit of excitement in their lives, because everything
mm-hmm.
else is just bland.
They don't even the kids don't even have birthdays to look forward to, right? Like they talk about Rowan, his parents have seen so many years. Society doesn't even keep track of the year anymore. It's just whatever animal it is, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's uh
It's a
it's
very
really
passive living because you have food, you have money, you have jobs because the Thunderhead's going to take care of everything. You don't have to worry about all those things. You don't have to worry about getting sick. You don't have to worry about dying. So,
I mean, you don't even have to worry about harsh weather.
Yeah.
There's like a small snippet towards the beginning of the book where they've learned mostly how to control Mother Nature.
Yeah. All humanity's problems are solved, and why aren't we in space at this point again? Like they kind of hint at it that different colonies failed, but if the Thunderhead's all knowing, all seeing, and able to do these complex algorithms, how'd that fail? I feel like we're missing some details there.
So two lines of thought on that. The first one was when they did fail in space, they were dead, not just dead-ish. So everyone's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And then the second thing, they had a snippet where it kind of like hinted at it. I think it was a journal entry at the beginning of one of the chapters where they're like, oh, and I to have the Thunderhead tell us that we've actually been successful in expanding life and seeding the stars or something. I was disappointed there wasn't space travel, but
I agree.
I'm
I agree.
currently in that line of books. A lot of space travel.
We have not read the next books, probably cupboards, and we're trying not to do any spoilers from books 2 and 3 just yet, but it sounds like some of these questions might get answered later.
Hinted at.
But yeah, so of the size we saw in book 1, what was everybody's favorites? I think we might get a couple people in the chat say Goddard, which I see where he's coming from.
I didn't like him until the end of the book. Like the whole time I was listening to him, I was like, okay, come on, somebody kill him. I'm done with him. Get rid of him. He's got too much political power, too many games, this, that, and the other. And to see our main man, Faraday, suggest something, and they just keep manipulating it so that, oh, well, we're out of time. Oh, well, this, that, and the other. It really, he took it a lot better than I would have. But then at the end of the book, after I thought about it, it's like, okay, those things did happen in the Age of Mortality. They're doing them differently, but yeah, he's not my favorite, but I didn't appreciate him till the end.
So the person that I actually came to dislike the most, even more than Goddard, was the Highblade, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Xenocrates, because he was the one that never allowed things to come to a decision. And every time Goddard suggested something, such as at the First Conclave, when he suggested that after the year, Rowan and Citra should glean one another. Whoever wins should glean the other as their first gleaning. Rather than let any sort of discussions, and Xenocrates is like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's move on to the next thing now.
Yeah.
He's a political person.
The blackmail.
I would see Goddard and the Highblade. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He would be our politicals nowadays. I don't. Those are the two characters that I don't like. I have some respect for Goddard because I agree with some things that he said. For example, like why everyone else got to love what they do and I cannot have the same love for what I do. But at the end, what he does is kill people, glean people. So it's a moral debate. So I don't like Goddard, but I understand some stuff that he says, but the same thing. The character that I dislike the most is the Highblade because he's just corrupt.
Well, it was partially corruption, but it was really yet again Goddard for having his kid, which was a whole paradox in itself because you're not supposed to have any, but that's the only thing you can really live for. Like if you can never die. And if your family has immunity, oh, just kidding, can't legitimize this kid. You can't claim it as your own. So that immunity is now gone.
Hmm.
I
So,
think
so you did mention that Goddard was blackmailing Xenocrates. However, during one of the parties when Xenocrates first shows up, when Goddard calls Esme over, it looked like Xenocrates was taken by surprise that Goddard even had her. So, but that was after the first conclave. That was, I think, after the second conclave as well. So, was there really any blackmailing going on?
Up to that
I
point.
think there
Maybe
was.
Goddard knew about the daughter. He didn't just have the daughter at his power.
I don't know, and even just the fact that he has a daughter, that the Highblade has a daughter, that right there shows a level of corruption, because the Highblade, the top of the top,
Yes,
Scythe, has broken one of the commandments. Like, if any
Yes.
Scythe should follow all 10, it would be him.
I think Goddard, being his apprentice at one point, probably had a lot of other dirt on him.
True.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he knew about it, but
I thought
the
I thought
Highblade
they
may not have known he had her captive, right?
I felt like he knew, and it wasn't until I went back through the second time, because there was the random quote from Esamine or whatever, where she said, "Oh, Mom told me pizza would be the death of me," which, that just stuck with me for some reason. And then she goes to the food court, and ironically enough, that's when Goddard's crew rolls up and they start taking out the food court. And I'm pretty sure that happens before the first conclave. And then
yes.
Yeah.
due to that, and due to the wife and or the mother of the child already knowing and getting immunity, he didn't directly go to Highblade, but I felt like Highblade already knew. And the reason he was so surprised at the pool party was, he's not been able to see his child, and putting it into this situation where, he's at the beck and call of Goddard due to the situation. It was more of a shock, like, I can't do anything. I want to do so much.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we got a couple good comments in the chat along these lines. A lot of mixed feelings on Xenocrates, but as Creepy points out, he's not the only one that's broke commandments, right? Curie and Faraday, who we feel so strongly for, at least I do. They're two of my favorite characters, maybe not my favorite characters in book one. But they broke the 9th commandment, and we find that out later when Citra gets framed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started. So I'm looking at the 9th commandment here. It says, "Thou shalt have no spouse nor spawn." So Scythe, Curie, and Faraday, they technically never married.
Mm-hmm.
So
they
would that really be that they broke the 9th commandment, though? I mean,
You're becoming too lawyer.
I'm nitpicking. I'm being technical. It's
true.
I mean, come on, Creepy's, as he said, he's trying to egg us on into talking about this. So let's get technical for a bit. Did they really break the 9th commandment?
No spouse, no spawn. Yeah. So I don't think they married.
And I agree that even though they broke a commandment, a rule there, because okay, they didn't spouse each other, but they're also not supposed to have relationships and feelings for other people, especially other sides. They weren't the Highblade. They didn't have the whole Scythe in their power. So yes, they did.
Mm-hmm.
They did break the commandment. They had a partner, a romantic person,
Mm-hmm.
But first they were punished,
Mm-hmm.
and they broke their relationship.
Was it 12 deaths?
I
It
thought it
was
was only
seven.
7.
Deaths? Seven deaths. Okay.
And 70 years without even
I think 70 years with no contact.
with no contact. Yeah.
Wow.
But yet again, like I'm sorry, I don't have the commandments up in front of me. I thought that was more of a old school back in my day vibe. It wasn't that it was not allowed. It was more due to how we have to uphold ourselves as scythes. We cannot have romantic relationships.
Something along those lines. Something that I thought was pretty interesting about the commandments is like in a lot of ways they're trying to keep them apart of humanity, but if you get too detached from humanity and from society, I think that's part of the challenge with some of the sides like Goddard, where um, they just don't value any lives that aren't scythes, right? Because they're just so far removed from humanity.
And I think that actually turns out to be kind of a double-bladed sword too. I mean, you separate yourself from humanity, so you kind of lose track of what the general society is leaning towards in terms of thoughts or actions and whatnot. But sites are still human. They do still have some of those baser human needs and wants, such as greed or love. So I don't know. I don't know if it's really possible to have a full separation so that they are just a scythe, a tool in order to do essentially some population control, to have that fear of death still within society, so they don't all just stagnate entirely.
Even though arguably, and I think Faraday makes the point a couple times, like society has stagnated, right? Like what's the motivation for people anymore? Like you're essentially immortal. There's no risks. There's no dangers.
I think another reason why the site shouldn't have a lover or partner, spouse, whatever, is because, okay, if it's just another scythe, you wouldn't have this problem. But if it's immortal, if they grant him
Immortality.
not immortality, if you grant
Immunity.
Immunity for this person, it would kind of be a bias because, and then you cannot like you see Faraday saying that about that friend of his, like he cannot grant every year, but the immunity for her. But and what if another scythe decides to glean the lover of another scythe? That would become a huge problem because
That's true. That's true. More ties to humanity, more ways to manipulate and or blackmail, like the High Blade. Yeah.
So, and that brings me kind of back to, well, okay, I would have to say Rowan is my favorite character. Go more into that, but Rowan.
Yes.
Yes.
But with this whole love triangle stuff, we're talking about people jumping off of buildings to feel something. We're talking about Scythe got her manipulating people by deactivating their nanites to make an impression, to kind of set a precedent. And
there's a lot with that hazing ceremony he has going on, which we need to come back to that when we talk more about Rowan.
Involvement of love, like that's just another piece of the puzzle. Like they don't have the feeling of other stuff. And in Faraday and Curie's case, they were both young. And the whole, at the end of it, or towards the end, when they're laughing at the irony of he wrote a page in his journal, but then he ripped it out, and how it got so misconstrued. But when Curie talks to Citra about it, they were very young, and there's a lot more emotions involved. So I think having a little bit more. Like the nanites and everything is good. The rules are good for several reasons so that they're not adding to the population when they're supposed to be taking away from it. But there needs to be something, either the tweaker to allow more and different nanites to get out, to be able to keep a mortal or, you know, personality, not personality, doing other stuffs that find or create joy in your life to better understand what all's going on.
Yeah. Also, I think some comments are being pretty interesting right now. Like, and what about those people that only want to please the sides? Like, it could it could become a sexual assault on some level, because
Yeah, if
like
they're able
like
to.
Creepy is saying, mortals do whatever the sides want them to do, so that could become a really weird situation.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. And that's where this book for me does well. Like even though it's a utopian society, they show that there are flaws. Even though Scythes have the 10 commandments and they're above everyone else, they still have flaws. And I think it's kind of backwards for me because I always say don't mix work and pleasure. So typically working with a spouse can get complicated, but I think that's the only way it could work. Because if it's a scythe to a mortal, like the Highblade did, yeah, they can have others gleam. They can seek favor due to that, and that's kind of what Goddard, ends up doing to Rowan at the party, where essentially this girl in a bikini comes up to give him a massage, and he's like, "Oh, hey, if it's great, I'll grant you immunity." So it's not directly him, but that's kind of already happening. And I think
Yeah.
the only way to make it work is Scythe the Scythe, who can't be.
Yeah. And on the Scythe comment, we talked a little bit about this earlier offline, but there's a number of romance subplots in the book, and for me, I don't read a whole lot of YA, but I'm curious what your guys' take on it in book one. Did you find it believable, too much, too little? For me, I usually don't read a whole lot of books that have large romance subplots to them, so I didn't find it too overbearing, but just everything we talked about with the conflicts of interest, just kind of seeing Rowan and Citra, their dynamics there, and how much it hurt them during the conclaves, they're feeling towards each other. Yeah, thoughts?
So I don't think the romance aspect was too much. There was enough there, I think, to make them feel human, because when you're stuck with the same person doing, physically exerting yourself in various ways,
They go through a
studying,
lot together.
eating, there's going to be some kind of tension between those two people, and that can quickly and easily turn into sexual tension.
Mm-hmm.
But
especially if you're a teenager that has not
Right.
had
exactly when
attention
you're
before.
when you've got all your hormones raging in ways that you don't even understand, yeah, it's understandable, but it wasn't overbearing. I didn't think it never turned into a situation where it's like, okay, here we go again. You roll your eyes. It's like, all right, just get through this and move along with the story. So all in all, I think there was enough for it to be believable, but not too much where it detracts from the pacing.
I think that the sexual and the physical attraction was there from especially from Rowan to Citra. Citra took a while to have that, but I found it hard to believe that became the love they feel for each other, especially because they only spent 4 months together.
It's a long time for teenagers, though.
It can be, though. But I mean, like, so they spend these 4 months together. They spend some time together, but they know it's a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And then they discover one of them will have to kill the other.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, we know about they know about this, but I think that at the end they seem to love so much each other that I found it hard to believe, because I don't think there was a lot to grow this love.
It, for me, I kind of assumed that there was more off camera that we really didn't get in the storyline. Yeah, they kind of hinted at some of the tension, but yeah, you're right. It's only 4 months that they're really together. I think there's some of the additional components of, like with Rowan, where he was pretty much alienated at school. That
Like, I mean, for you to die for someone else, there has to be a lot of love there.
Die in the age of immortality.
Yes, so yeah. They are willing to give their life up for the other. So I found it a little bit hard to believe.
I think a lot of that is their moral beliefs that the book established pretty early on. Neither of them wanted to be there. They were both selected by Scythe Faraday because they did not want to become Scythes. So I thought it was kind of understandable, where it's like, okay, if I have to kill someone and do something that I don't want, I would rather die, because I don't even want to be in this situation in the first place. On top of which, 4 months is a short time, and I don't think that towards the end of the book they were necessarily basing it off of love. I think it was more just the camaraderie that was built within those 4 months. Yeah, there was some sexual tension there, and they commented, like, at the end, Rowan said, "Oh, I love you," and whatnot, but I think it really was just a solid friendship and camaraderie from experiencing the same hardships for those 4 months, seeing what the other person was doing when they were separate from a third-party perspective, and just having a form of respect for one another.
Yeah, very much so for me too. Like, between Rowan and Citra, it was product of the environment. Like we said, Rowan came from being the lettuce and kind of ignored to the camaraderie of learning how to do this thing that neither of them want to do, and the way it brings out the competition in both of them. So for that, it was a lot of the environment. But as far as like the romance, there was not a lot of it, but it was so elegantly done in my eyes. Like, we saw a little bit of the flirtation between Rowan and Citra at the beginning, like, okay, but then just the fact of, wait a minute, Faraday isn't dead. Just kidding, Grandma of Death is actually, has been your, lover, or whatever we classified it as, and that's why all of this other stuff has happened. Like, it puts so many other pieces into place, when they go to that first conclave and they're explaining to the people, and it's like, oh, that's Curie, and then they route off her title, and she just gives that like smirk or whatever, and then the fact that Curie ends up picking up Citra, it makes a lot of sense. And then like the whole letter coming out, and Citra thinking it's about her, and I don't know, it was subtly done, but it added a believability to the dynamic of the characters, because for Faraday and his way of gleaming and giving them a bit of peace and letting them know made a lot of sense. But then the way Curie does, it's a lot of similar minded or old school traditions, but at the same time, it's in a different direction where they don't get a chance to justify it, to rationalize it. It's just quick, done, and over. Yeah. I thought it was done well, and
so yeah, we've kind of brushed on it a little bit, but of the two apprentices, who do you guys want to explore a little bit further first? Because like just their progression and their journey,
Never
I don't know.
answered favorite character.
Oh, me, my favorite. I think for me it was probably Voltra, the apprentice for Goddard. That
favorite character.
Favorite character, yeah. I mean, he really I felt was an anchor for Rowan. And I eventually want to talk more about Rowan's journey and Citra's journey, but with him and Esme as he's going through all that with Goddard, I think it allows him to kind of regain or keep his humanity. Because like without Esme and him there, I think Rowan just would have got pushed over the edge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel he was a critical role for keeping Rowan's moral compass, but for me, I just kind of saw him as a whiny brat. I was just kind of like,
he's
you
young.
do stuff, and that's okay, but at least own up to it. I don't know.
True.
You jumped into this circle. You were not a part of this circle. You were with a different Scythe. You had several options. I get it. You don't want to be left behind. But for me, I never get the first gen of anything. There's going to be bugs. There's going to be everyone getting onto the servers at the same time and them not being able to stay up. Like, I'm okay with letting other people burn the bridge and figure it out before I get there. But that's okay. If that's your favorite, I would have gone with Rowan just because, like, I don't know, kind of reminds me a bit of myself with being not necessarily the lettuce, but kind of the lettuce. I am the middle. And I felt like, you had the responsibility and whatnot. And then the younger one got coddled, and I just kind of got the leftovers. But that's a separate tangent. And then just his progression of, after he meets Faraday and everyone's giving him flack for it, and he just stands up and he owns up to it. Yeah, it was not accurate, but he just embraced it and he took all the wind out of their sails and made it his own. And then the same thing at his first convoy, no, first conclave, and how he just that's how it is, failed it outright, and then he breaks the rules again and just kind of is burning his own path where he snaps her neck. And then at the end, oh man, like he had the most, I enjoyed his character the most, and his progression was amazing, and I can't wait to see what he does on book 2.
I'm kind of there with you. I would definitely say Rowan is my favorite character. I feel like my own personality is kind of similar to his, with the whole just aloof and nonchalant. No, not being the lettuce. I'm firstborn, so I'm not in your situation there, Peter. But no, just the whole, you take it as it comes. You whatever the outcome is, you deal with it, and then you move on. So
he rolls with it.
Yeah, he rolls with the punches, and I think that's what I really liked about him. Yeah. And then his whole development with, I would say he really started becoming my favorite character at the second conclave when he was trying to lose. He was already being Goddard's apprentice for a little bit, and he was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to make sure Citra is the one chosen. That way she gleans me. She moves on with, everything, and I'm just done. And then Citra just won't let him.
Yeah.
Everything he does to try and be worse, she does something to essentially pull him out of it. And finally, he's just like, all right, fine. You win. I'm going to do what I've been trained to do. And then he just snaps her neck, ends it right there.
Yeah.
So
I think that adds
go ahead.
a little bit more to the like romance subplot, because like it didn't come out straight and say that they were, and she maybe had feelings for him before, but then the fact that, she's getting irked because he's trying to throw it, and she's like, what, you think I'm not worthy? You think I can't handle it? And just kind of that back and forth.
She's also very competitive, and
Yeah.
she herself said at the beginning she's got a short temper. So I think, like, especially in that sparring match, Rowan was trying to kind of play the mind games a bit and kind of play the crowd, and Citra was just focusing on the two of them. And rather than feel like she's just not good enough, and that's why Rowan needs to kind of throw the match, she kept, egging him on to, no, just go and do everything you can. Beat me fair and square if you can. And then he does.
There was a couple levels of that fight where they were stepping into punches and they were trying to play to the crowd and just keep it all believable.
And I also feel like that moment is kind of the turning point for Rowan's character progression as well, because he goes from, just being very just rolling with the punches to the moment he snaps her neck, that's when he's just like, okay, this is when I'm going to start taking things seriously.
Yeah, definitely a turning point.
Yeah, we got some Goddard gang love in the chat right now. For me, like, that's what really is like a big test for me with books is, are the characters believable? Like, can you relate to them? I get so tired of, like, it's just the good and evil, right? For this book with the Scythe, there's not those clear lines. Like with Goddard and everybody, you can see from their point of view and just their reasoning behind it. But yeah, it's.
All right, what was your second question? We went back to the character one.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys thought of the different progression there for each of the apprentice, because they definitely didn't follow the traditional presence for or traditional path for the size, because several times they were supposed to be, their apprenticeship was supposed to stop, right? And you get them as nubs, early glance of just high school kids and kind of the experiences they go through, and then the journey to where they get by the end of book. Man, chat's just blowing up. End of book one is pretty interesting. So who do you guys want to talk about first? We talked a little bit about Rowan, but Citra holds her own, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel towards the beginning you get a good vibe of their moral compass when Faraday picks them up, and they kind of, I don't know, because we knew Rowan was more so reserved and able to keep his emotions in check, and
he has a temper too,
battle.
though.
What's up?
Yeah, he has his own temper too, though. Like he gets pushed to the point where he finally snaps, and we see it with like the school, right? When he calls everybody out, he's like, "Hey, yes, I was there and I killed the star football player. Was it Cole Lockman or whatever?"
But yeah.
And he's like, the Scythe was my uncle, and he just like takes control of the situation. We see a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think that's more picking his battles.
I thought that was more showing, as much as Rowan rolls with the punches, he's not a dumb kid.
Right.
He may be the lettuce, but he's not just, flowing along and just, being ignored and not really caring about anything. No, he's smart.
No, he knows. Both Citra and Rowan, they're pretty smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a reason why they were chosen, right?
Yeah, I don't believe it's just because of their moral principles. It was also because they were really smart kids. Like, they know their shit. Sorry for the word.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We try to keep it PG, but it happens.
Sorry.
They do know. And yeah, there's a reason why he picked them. But yeah, sorry. Carry on.
So yeah. I guess For me, it's really the turning point because for Rowan, it was very much kind of like Marcelo was saying, the second conclave where he takes control of the situation and it's like, okay, if you're not going to let me lose, I'm not going to win either. So snaps her neck. And then for Citra, the big turning point was when she just jumps off the building. She's been accused. She's, trying to do her own stuff. Honestly, has a better Scythe mentor. And, that was a good situation for her. But then after she just jumps, that's really when, I don't know, I enjoyed her character more.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the Thunderheads intervention there? That was kind of a big WTF moment for me. Kind of
It
find a loophole in getting involved.
it was subtle because I think when Rowan snapped her neck, there, and only after re-listening to it did I notice the Thunderhead tried to communicate with her at that point, and it was
Mm,
like hello, and she said like, or she didn't actually answer. Then next scene, she's woken up, and then
mm,
I enjoyed it, and it comes to what more is the Thunderhead not doing? And they kind of hint at that at the beginning when they're like, yeah, there are quite a few unsavories, and the Thunderhead doesn't step in until they become completely over the top. And after,
mm,
whatever, then they get a full time person. And then there was that quote or whatever for, oh, so and so called her his guardian angel and then married her. I just thought
I
that
think it's like
was,
Citra's uncle or whatnot.
yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
thought
yeah.
that was a nice touch. So much more, so much potential.
Yeah.
I thought that part on the Thunderhead interfering is like, even though the Thunderhead's not supposed to. So I believe, first, I believe that we're going to see a lot more of the Thunderhead in the second book, especially because the name of the second book's Thunderhead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a lot of things explained about it,
Good.
but I believe that it was like, even though the Thunderhead's not supposed to interfere and like he's away from the sides,
Mm-hmm.
it was a moment that we saw he's actually not away. He's seeing everything that is happening in
Mm-hmm.
the sidehood, and I think Thunderhead is like, that was a part that made me feel like Thunderhead's ready to take control over the situation, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Thunderhead seeing what is going on with the corruption, and that the Scythehood is not what it was supposed to be in the beginning
I,
anymore.
I think it's very similar to kind of like the unsavories who are splatting or who are doing whatever. The Thunderhead has parameters it works within. It sees the problem because you can't hide from it. It doesn't interfere with the scythes, but it is aware of things going on, and it's just deciding when is enough and what can be done because of it. Because, like, even if all
Mm-hmm.
the sites say, oh, well, you can't do anything, well, all the Thunderhead has to do is be like, sorry, I lost your files for reviving you.
Uh,
Sad day. Which, that was another weird moment for me. There's a uh, journal entry of Curie's where she's about to kill someone and she's talking to her, and the lady keeps asking her, where do I go from here? And she mentions, oh, well, all the Thunderhead has all your information. The Thunderhead,
mm-hmm.
or your people, your family will be able to talk to the Thunderhead and it will respond as if it's you. And she keeps going back and she's like, well, where do I go from here? And the fact that the Thunderhead has everybody's information regardless, I don't understand why they need any physical DNA unless it's like a return policy. That way there aren't multiple clones running around. Or if
Mm.
like they need the new updated data for the backup. I don't
They
know.
don't go into a lot of the technology there, but it pretty much implies, similar to the franchise like Ghost in the Shell, that they're able to digitize their consciousness a little bit, right? If like all your memories and stuff get uploaded to the Thunderhead,
Could be
uh,
the nanites. Everybody has nanites, and that's a way
it
to
could be the nanites.
electronically
Yeah,
connect.
yeah. They don't really explain too much of that. Um, but yeah, what were some of your guys' favorite parts from book one? What really stood out for you?
Well, I do know the part that I hated the most.
Yeah,
Okay,
The
we
what
can
was
favorite
start
that?
part
there.
so I was kind of respecting Goddard until a certain point, but then when they entered the what is the name?
The
The
Tonus
Tonus
cult.
the Tonus code. I
Mhm.
was like, okay, this part is not. So I felt that something bad was going to happen. So
Mhm.
the part that I hated the most was when Rowan find Volta and
Mm,
that he had to kill all those children and then he gleans himself. That part for me was really heavy, and I'm like,
yes.
I'm really sad right now. I'm like, this is awful. And
Mhm.
then, but then we have a really good part of the book that is Rowan becoming a really badass and killing Goddard and all his minions, and
Yes.
like that
It
part was really good.
the author does a good job taking us on that emotional roller coaster, right? Because I think there were a couple sections there where I was right there with you. Like all of a sudden, we know something bad's going to happen, and we hit just that emotional low of Volta having an Anakin Skywalker moment and just, turning around and gleaning himself and just all the feels there to when Rowan just kind of takes control of the situation. And oh man, just that moment when I think, correct me if I get my numbers wrong, he on a regular basis was killing 12 and then stopping on like the 13th person or whatnot, just like
Yep.
exercising his control. And I think at one point they talk about how he had committed over like 2,000 uh, killings or whatnot at that point in the book, just because Goddard has him constantly taking these people out and stopping at the last person to have that self control. And he's basically conditioning him, and he talks about it in that final moment. They're like, "Oh, this is why he always makes me wait. This is why he always makes me wait." Like the desire to finish him off. And you got something, Pete?
Yes. On that
Oh.
note, I feel like Goddard had a severe advantage. Kind of talked about this a little bit offline in different regards, but anyway, a severe advantage due to the tweaker, due to him being able
Mm-hmm.
to manipulate his nanites to not
Mm-hmm.
have the know pain dampening thing allows Rowan to get that adrenaline rush, which then kind of, if you've
Yes.
ever had, that adrenaline rush, like you've been in a car accident or you've been in whatever, it's all happening super fast, but you're currently overclocking your system to where you're able to view it in a slow time. So, due to Goddard having that, utilizing that, he's able to find ways to manipulate people, like with Rowan,
Mm-hmm.
and not killing the last one. And due to
Mm-hmm.
Goddard tweaking and having less constraints, he's able to, manipulate the high blade, and he's able to manipulate Rowan into being that killing machine and getting that, yeah. So tweaker.
He, yeah, it makes you wonder too. Like he talks about how he turns a lot of that stuff off, at least like the pain, not necessarily the healing. Um, but just the manipulation there from Goddard, and then for Rowan, we've kind of talked about it a bit, but just the contrast for him. He's constantly going from one extreme to the other, and then to feel that intense pain for several days for the first time ever in his life. he experiences more than most of the other people around him there, just in regards to like the pain sensation. And then, yeah, just the contrast going from Faraday's way of thinking to Goddard's to the intense training, the lavish parties, excess gleanings.
So I think everything that Goddard did with Rowan, I mean, it was obvious Goddard was training Rowan to be like the ultimate killing machine. From the whole, leave the last one alive, to build up that urge to just finish the job, and not being able to for months on end, and teaching Rowan about, okay, if you get hurt, it's going to hurt a lot, because you don't have your nanites dumping opiates into your system to numb it. Yes. So if you don't want to get hurt, learn to dodge, learn to be faster, be nimble, be quicker, anticipate what the other person's going to do better. And all of that, and on top of that, with all the weapons training, it turned Rowan into the ultimate badass killing machine. But what Goddard was always counting on is that Rowan didn't have a moral compass as his foundation, which was the whole reason why Scythe Faraday picked him in the first place.
I don't know if he didn't see it. It was, I think...
he was trying to corrupt it, at least.
Yeah, Voltra touches on it, that it's
if he could turn
a badge
him.
of achievement, if he can turn...
Yeah. And then at the end, unfortunately, Volta, who had as you mentioned earlier, had chosen to follow Goddard and follow his ways. He did that unspeakable act of killing a classroom full of children, and he tried to redeem himself in the only way he thought was possible, by gleaning himself. That was kind of that flipping point for Rowan, where he's just like, okay, I'm done with this. This isn't what I want to do. I'm not going to keep doing this. And then he walks up to Goddard. There's the last, head of the Tonus cult guy there, and he goes to get that final kill that Goddard has been making him want for so long now, except it was on Goddard.
Yes.
And I kind of felt, you guys may disagree with me on this, but I thought that the way the author wrote that part and explained all that inner workings within Rowan's mind, it kind of built that urge of wanting to get that final kill within me as well.
Yes.
So when he finally...
No, he did a great...
So when Rowan finally got that final kill on Goddard, it was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. This is how the book needed to end.
Yes.
So...
And we talked about it, that high is right after that real low with Ultra, right? And there were several big moments like that in the book, several of just like those extreme emotional roller coasters. Like another one was like Faraday, when that happened. I wasn't expecting him to, quote, die, and just the low there of like, what, these characters that we've been starting to develop feelings for and have been following, versus just like, oh, you're just going to go back to your old life. Yeah, okay, not really. It's like, oh, now you guys get to work together and glean the other one. Like, that changed the whole nature of the game. And then Faraday just going and killing himself, that kind of caught me off guard.
I didn't believe.
Yeah,
I don't think he's dead. No.
I didn't think he self-gleaned. I was kind of following the same thought patterns of Citra, of he was assassinated.
Yes.
But I believed he was gone.
Yeah.
So when I read that part, I was like, he's not dead. No, wait. Then I started believing, okay, maybe he's dead, but he didn't self-glean. But when I read, like, it's... So when Citra started following the path of the supposed killer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's going to be Faraday. It's going to be Faraday at the end, and that was him. Like, okay, yes, I was right. He was not, but I really liked that because I don't know. It was just like I couldn't find another Scythe. Even Goddard didn't fit in the role of another killing another Scythe. There wasn't. It wouldn't. I don't think it would be believable if out of the blue we have another Scythe that killed Faraday.
I don't know. Goddard was master of manipulation in a whole slew of other ways. Maybe not him directly, but he was not above pulling strings in the background to get done what he needed to get done.
I don't think it would have been beyond him to be like, yeah, I've been gifted all this millions or billions or trillions of whatever their currency is, and it can be all yours if you just do this one simple task for me.
Right.
I agree with you.
And then I'll grant you immunity on top of that because you did the bidding of a Scythe, and
yeah.
I agree with you. Okay, I could see that coming because yes, if it was another Scythe that had killed Faraday, I think the only Scythe that we would believe would be Goddard. But I also didn't feel that was what it wasn't.
Yeah. I follow you. It wouldn't make as much sense because it's so, at least the direct way of getting rid of him. But yeah, thank goodness he came back. And then the ending when he showed up for Rowan, that was just such a good feel good moment. Another one of those high and lows was when we finally get to the third conclave after everything. And I think it opens up with Citra talking about how she has a plan, maybe. And you're just like, okay, what are they going to do? Like, how are they getting out of this?
Yeah, that was always in the back of my mind because Rowan initially just took it as, okay, I'm going to die. I can't Gleamer. I'm going to try to throw it. I'm going to die. And then he ends up being, ensnared by some of the Goddard stuff and changing his values. And yeah, so highs and lows for me was each of the conclaves, like that very first one. It's like, okay, Rowan throws it, whatever, but then they've got to gleam each other, and that's just like a giant overarching cloud of how are they going to get out of it, what are they going to do, and then go to the second conclave where, yet again, Rowan's trying to throw it, trying to, take the high road, so to speak, and then he's like, okay, well, that's not going to work, I'm going to have to snap your neck, and then go to the third one where, she finally gets the ring, and it's just something so simple where in the age of mortality, after you have that spat with someone, you just want to punch them in the face. So it doesn't happen a whole lot in this book, but it's believable. You just want to punch them in the face, and then
even the high blade kind of gives her a little nod, like, "Oh, he'll fit in just nicely with what you did there." I see what you did there. Talk about that final test a little bit. I'm curious if you guys, granted, we have the viewpoint of the age of mortality where we're currently at, but could you guys ever see yourself becoming a Scythe if it was offered? And just, what about that final test there where they have to go and kill-ish, make their family dead-ish? For that final test that cut all ties.
I think it adds a good contrast to it because kind of the morals of Faraday, if you enjoy this, you're not the right person. And I thought it added a good contrast that way, but then when the people were responding to how Citra did her deadish thing, I was a little thrown off because they were like, "Oh, that was sloppy. Oh, this. Oh, that." But she was, comforting, much like her mentor did So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a really it's a really hard task. Like you have to glean but not glean. You know that it's going to be revived. A person that you love. So in the case of Citra, her little brother. But I think for the Scythe, to become a Scythe is a good task because you have to cut the strings with your family. And so what best way to prove that if it's not like gleaning, even if you know he's not going to be dead, a member of your family. But I also think that the worst part is not even that you're gleaning that person, because the person is going to be revived. But the fact that you are going to remember that forever, and you know that the person is going to remember that as well, is the worst part. I don't see myself as getting the task done.
It would be hard, and the author even talks about that. Yeah, they revive, but it doesn't take away the memories, right? So it forces your family, that family member is going to remember being killed by you.
Yeah.
And then also just like you're going to remember doing that act. And I understand the philosophy behind it, to where, cutting ties, separating, and also it's not always going to be easy, right? We see several instances where the gleanings kind of backfire on the size and things get out of control. So, what's the most challenging thing they can throw at you? Do you have something, Pete?
Yes. So the Thunderhead is able to reduce the amount of pain you feel in the day to day with the nanites. The Thunderhead is able to get rid of your depression due to the nanites. The Thunderhead can completely recreate you from ground zero, but he decided to leave the fact of how you died. And it's more of he kept it as a deterrent, because I don't know. I feel like it very easily could be adjusted within the power of the Thunderhead.
Well, I think he talks about that too. I don't know if this is a direct quote, but it's from the website where the Thunderhead talks about humans learn from their mistakes. I cannot. I make no mistakes. So by keeping those memories of how they became deadish, it would also help give them the opportunity to learn from said mistakes, right?
Yeah.
You keep not looking where you're going and checking your mail and get hit by a car. Maybe the revival ice cream isn't as good the third or fourth time. So you learn from your mistake and you stop becoming deadish. Yeah. Was there ever a moment where you guys felt like you knew who they were going to pick between Citra and Rowan?
No, it was never concrete. There was always subtle nuances of how Rowan was going to throw it and how Citra wanted to come by it, the competitiveness. And then not until she punches him in the face was I like, oh, okay.
Here's our loophole.
Yep.
I think that until the Third Conclave, there was no way to know, because we could see that the people, the old generation of the sites were leaning towards Citra, but the new generation was turned leaning towards Rowan because of Goddard. But I think that the moment that Rowan killed Goddard and the minions, it would be really hard for the sides to pick him, because now no one was like going to support Rowan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But even up till the beginning of the Third Conclave, like they were very divided, and then there was that power vacuum that Goddard kind of left. Like, people were thankful that Goddard wasn't around. Part of the side of them was, and then also like they either liked him or they hated him.
But even the sites that were thankful for Goddard dying, they were mainly the old generation, which were already on Citra's side.
Yeah.
So he ended up without any support.
It makes you wonder. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
With that, after Rowan takes out the Goddard gang, and then the head, Nightblade, is that what I'm thinking? Or Highblade. The Highblade, when they have that interaction where Rowan's like, "Oh, here's this, girl, and she needs to get back to her mother. Do you want to take her?" And they have that whole like back and forth, and then the Highblade's like, "You know what? It's better to let sleeping dogs lie. We don't need to sully their image. This, that, and the other." I felt like he may have pulled some strings on Rowan's behalf, but I'm glad he didn't.
I'll go ahead.
But even it would be a really not bad thing for him to do if he pulled the strings to get Rowan the Scythe, because he would just get another Goddard that knew something that the Highblade had done in the past and could use that to blackmail him.
True.
Yeah, makes sense to kind of clean house and maybe get rid of him, go the other direction to where kind of cut up all those loose ends with his illegitimate daughter. Yeah. I'm in the same boat with you guys. I wasn't sure one way or the other which way it was going to go, and I think it really came down to which school of thought had more influence, right? Because Citra very much lined up with the old school of thought, and I think Rowan did too, but he definitely was leaning to the new school of thought camp as well.
And that
I would say Rowan was the closest Rowan got to the new school, to the new way, was the way he was trained and what he could do. But as far as like his inner moral ethics, he was still very much the old way.
He was, but the other side didn't know he was.
Right. From a third party perspective, you can't know that. So, and Rowan, being as smart as he was, he knew that. He knew that the only person that knew that he was more of the old way was himself. No one else would be able to know for sure.
And even his love interest kept going back and forth. Her mentor
wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
She wanted to believe he was a good person, but
as soon as Curie tells the love story about Fairday, I kind of felt that was the way it was going. I just couldn't figure out how Rowan and Citra were going to get out of it, and I was a little irked that she kept pushing for Citra to get the ring and end Rowan. That he's a lost cause, and I get it; it's a different dynamic. But as soon as she, said, "Hey, the letter's not about you; it's about me. We've got this," I was like, okay, Rowan and Citra are going to get together, or how? Because even when Citra comes back, Curie's like, "Oh, how is our friend? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll join him in 100 years. So she still has that intent to escape. And that was, side note, I was a little disappointed in how much of other places we got to see. I understand why we didn't, but we get a glimpse for where Fairday is and when Citra is escaping, due to the accusations. And then you pass over that geographical line or whatever, and they say, "No, your jurisdiction isn't here." And they talk about the Highblade is only of Mid-America, and even though they all have the same 10 commandments, it's all subject to interpretation. It's all with the enclaves that they come together on, what their viewpoints and what direction they want to go. So I'm curious to see more into where Faraday's at, and
So the thing that I kind of came to realize with all the conclaves, with all the Scythes, while society, thanks to the cloud, which later became known as the Thunderhead, kind of broke away from our real life modern day governments and politicians, the Scythedom kind of didn't. And in fact, it did the opposite. It remained, as modern day government, as the Age of Mortality government. They still have these conclaves. They still get together. They go through the whole political, hooplas and all that, and try and make decisions and make changes. And it takes forever because government takes forever. And while the rest of the world is just moving along without any of these worries, the Scythedom is still stuck in these old political ways.
A lot of good points right there, because early on in the story, they really talk about how the Thunderhead kind of eliminated the need for politicians and all that stuff. He just takes care of everything. And then the Scythedom is supposed to kind of be that counterbalance to help curve off the population growth. Yet there's so much politics there. It's practically like, oh my goodness, that's a good chunk of what this book is about. It's just the politics behind a Scythedom. And I think you're right, like in a lot of ways. And again, there goes Gang Goddard team, where like he makes a lot of sense. He's trying to take it in a new direction. Humanity's stagnant. Population growth is out of control.
Yeah, they even mentioned that, with all the sites in the world, with the quota of almost a gleaning a day, the population is still growing.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Exactly. So Goddard, with him trying to remove that quota, that would be a way to, curb that growth, or maybe even cause it to decline a bit, which would bring about, a whole slew of other topics to discuss. But
yes.
And I don't know, that's where I didn't really put it all into perspective until the end, where the way Faraday does it is, statistical. Okay, it makes sense. The way Curie initially did it was more, hey, I'm taking out the bad guy, the politician, so whatever. And then the way Goddard did it, they're all things that like actually happened in the day of mortality. So I don't think there's a one-trick pony or a one-shoe-fits-all. So I don't know. It's I think the way Goddard was saying, if we remove the cap, and that means ones with healthier appetites are able to do more, and then ones who want to do less can do less. I don't know. It's just going to be tricky to manage at the end of it all.
Go ahead, Marcelo. Do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it would be really tricky. And the way he worded it, I mean, you could tell he was a master manipulator, telling that, the sites that didn't want to do as much, that would be okay, because the sites that wanted to do more would be able to help them out and make it seem like there would be unity within the Scythedom, when in fact he's trying to split it up even more. Or you could even argue that, he is trying to unify the Scythedom under him.
Yeah.
Power grabs.
And it's not the first time. We hear a little bit about some of the different purges. I think one of the journal entries from Curie was about the Scythedom going and focusing for a little bit on getting rid of people from the age of morality and gleaning more of them, to where society was more just of afterwards, where everybody grew up in the age of immortality, and how the collective unconscious will kind of shift with that.
And then one final point on Scythedoms being kind of like their own government and their own form of politics. We got a glimpse of that from the Scythes from the Amazonias.
Yeah.
They, as Pete mentioned, Scythes from the Mid-America region had no jurisdiction there. Well, that's exactly like different countries. You send a police officer from the United States over to Mexico, the Mexican people aren't going to listen to him because he has no power there. He has no jurisdiction. It's the exact same thing. The Scythes are stuck in the old days, and now I'm after saying that, I'm starting to sound like another Goddard crony. But I mean,
did Goddard do nothing wrong? Let us know in the chat and comments below. We're starting to believe more and more that perhaps Goddard's truly is the visionary he's made out to be, and hashtag Goddard did nothing wrong.
I don't know. I still really hated him, and I was so glad when he died. But as far as like his method, okay, there's some reality to it.
Yeah,
I think the way he did things was wrong, but the idea behind why he did things the way he did, not so much.
Yes.
I think he was right on a lot of things. He just went about it incorrectly.
Yeah.
Yes. I could get behind that. I could get behind that.
Any other big points that are? Go ahead.
I was about to say, I think we're moving into the final stage of the book discussion. If you guys feel like we missed any big points, please throw them in the chat.
I just want to say that my favorite character was Curie, and I think she was a badass. Yes. And I'm really glad that we got to see her on that point when Citra ran away by herself, and we see Curie being like, so when the other Scythe comes and she just get the situation on her side, she blows up the two cars, and she's like, yes, that was a moment that we could see why she is the Grand Dame of Death.
Yes, she is awesome. And yeah, she is amazing. And we see so many of these different characters where they don't stay true to her values, but she's definitely one of those that holds true to her values even when the going gets tough, right? And she goes out of her way. And she was just such a good mentor to Citra.
She really was.
Yeah, I really agreed with a lot of things. Like, she is from the old generation of Scythes. And one thing that I didn't particularly like from Faraday is how he gets to the person he's going to glean. He talks, and he in all that part. But I think that's a little bit of psychology torture, like because one part that it's not even the gleaning, but the fear of being gleaned. So that part's built up a lot on the mind of the person that's going to be gleaned. Scythe Curie, she just goes there, you don't even know what's happening, and you're gleaned.
Yeah.
At first, I disagree with that because I was like, oh, she's not given any chance for the person to do anything. But after consideration, I was like, no, I can agree with that because she's just like, you don't need to suffer. So you're going to get gleaned. End of the story. You got gleaned.
It's kind of more true to the Age of Mortality's way of dying.
Yeah, because we don't know when we're going to die. So we are not like, oh, I'm not all the time scared to die. Oh, of course, like we were talking when we were offline, I'm not going to jump off the third floor because I know that I may die.
Right.
But so the fear of dying, yes, it dictates some aspects of my life, but I'm not constantly thinking and fearing I may die next. But when the time comes, it comes. You don't have time to
write a letter.
Usually you don't have time to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die in 5 minutes. I don't know when I'm going to die.
I don't know. I would argue that in different circumstances is kind of both, because in the
It
realm of like
depends.
failing health and other things like that, you know, you don't necessarily know exactly when, but you've got a general outline or idea of failing health. But you're right, the majority of it is, you know, or if you're in a hostage or whatever situation, you know, there's always that potential, and it's not until it's like right in our face. But the way Curie really came together for me was after the Gleamings. There's a scene where she's talking to the family of the Gleaned, and she's like, "Do you want to kill me? You know, I took the father from your child, I took the husband from the wife. The first, and you know, kind of like with Citra, you know, you just want to punch him in the face. You just want to, first instinct is more primal, and the fact that she gave them that opportunity and they were able to rationalize it, and then they were able to enjoy their dessert more. And she did a lot more on the back end, where Faraday attended the funeral, which was a nice touch, but not as relevant.
I think a lot of that too is once a person is finally, face to face with that aspect of potentially taking a life, or in this case, rendering someone deadish, it's a much heavier action to take than one may initially think. So when someone loses a relative or a spouse or a child or a parent, yeah, they're angry. They want to take revenge, but once they finally have that knife in front of them and the option to do it, it's like, wow, this knife is a lot heavier. I actually don't think I can do it. How are you able to do this on a daily basis? I have more respect for you as a Scythe because this is your job, and thank you for doing what you do. I could not do it.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of getting a glimpse to the inner workings of what it's like to be a Scythe, and creating more respect towards that particular profession of Scythedom for the people that really don't know much about it.
Yeah. The job does a good job, or the book does a good job kind of introducing us to that, and then working through the psychology and seeing the different ways that the Scythes handle the gleanings. I honestly am not sure which way I'd prefer it to go. Like the quick and painless is nice, but then like the compassion from Scythe Faraday, and then just, I don't know, mass chaos from Goddard. They're not wrong, right? They have a lot of autonomy as long as they hold to the commandments. But yeah.
Oh man, I'm excited about Lucifer for the second one, and about the Thunderhead.
Like Lucifer, yep.
Yes, that's they just kind of tease that a little bit at the end, don't they?
They don't come out and say it, but they say it. I mean, Rowan walked up or ran the gauntlet in his black robe, which is uncustomary, and then he's doing all these things, you know, posing as under a different name, and it turns out Faraday isn't deadish or is on, or yeah, didn't actually die, and he already knows how to modify his ring, because the people who got immunity got it from, you know, they assume his ring, but yeah, he's able to mod it with like that freezing when she put it on her finger. Anyway, I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to the second book for sure.
Yeah. Did we miss any big points from the books, Marcelo and Barbara?
I think we hit upon just about everything.
Yep.
There's a lot of good stuff there. A lot of good stuff. Final thoughts, Pete?
Yeah, we got it. Were we for sure as to next weekend?
I'm on the same page as you, man. If you want to go ahead and make announcements, appreciate everybody showing up.
Which one were we doing? Sorry, we talked
Bob?
about 2 alternative.
Yeah, I think we're going to be doing Bobverse Book 3 next weekend, Sunday at 8 p.m. Go back to that. We've already done the first 2 Geek Out sessions. They were a lot of fun, staying in the sci-fi realm. We do have plans to tentatively come back and pick up on the arc of Scythe, though we don't have those officially nailed down yet. So keep an eye on the geekonmysleeve.com calendar. And yeah, always looking for good book suggestions. Appreciate everybody showing up. Marcelo and Ba, thank you so much for joining us on the live stream to Geek Out.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Man, I wish I was that in sync.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So Sunday.
Sunday,
we'll give you the whole
8 p.m.
chair. You'll only need the edge. Yeah, every given Sunday.
Yep. If you guys we try to do what the community is interested in. If there's books you would like us to do more live discussions of, let us know. And yeah, please like, comment, subscribe.
Yep. Buttons. Buttons.
Buttons. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.